In 5.7, we're doing factoring patterns for x squared plus bx plus c. And on these, it's going to be c positive. So let's look at examples from the sections. First, we are looking at example 1. On here, you're factoring out x plus 3 and x plus 5 into a trinomial. And after the practice you've had, we've used FOIL method where you do x times x to get x squared. And your last term is going to be 3 times 5, which is a positive 15. And you're used to multiplying those out. Now, what I've shown before, you do the x times 5 and the x times 3. I want you to look at it a little different way this time. So let me erase this. What you're going to be paying a lot of attention to as you're working these problems are your inner terms and your outer terms combined. So in this particular one, your inner terms are going to create a positive 3x, and your outer terms will create a 5x. Now what happens if you work that out the other way is you would have x squared plus 3x by combining these, and you'd have 5x by combining, I missed there, by combining those. So your middle term is created by plus 8x. Now if you're not comfortable with that yet, you can still do the x squared plus 5x plus 3x plus 15 and then combine your middle terms. But you want to get a little bit quicker at that. These problems are going to get a lot longer, so after you make this more of an automatic process, you should be able to go straight to this x squared plus 8x plus 15. Now looking at example 2, your middle terms are going to be negative 6 times x, and your outer terms are going to be negative 4x. So when you put those together, remember you always add after you multiply those terms together, your middle term will be negative 10x. Then your first term will be x times x, which is x squared, and that'll be with everything in this section. And your last term in your trinomial will be negative 6 times negative 4, so that's a positive 24. Be very careful with your signs on here. Alright, now let's start factoring. Example 3, factor y squared plus 14y plus 40. The plus 40 is what lets you see what needs to be factored. So let's do a factor tree of 40 and look and see the different ways of getting 40. You can do 1 times 40. You can do 2 times 20. 3 won't go in, so your next one will be 4 times 10. And then a little longer here, 5 and 8 will also go in there. Now what you're trying to do is you're trying to reach 14. Your goal is your middle term. So I'm looking for a positive 14 based on a combination of these terms. And they can be either added together or subtracted. So if you're looking at sums of these numbers, this would be 41. And that could be a positive or a negative 41. They could both be negatives, and you'd get negative 1 minus 40 more would be negative 41. Now, just keep that in mind. I'm not going to put plus minus in front of every term. But the sum of these would give you 22. The sum of 4 and 10 is 14. And although that's the number we're going for, I'm going to go ahead and complete the grid here. And the sum of 8 and 5 would give you 13. Now, as we move into different types of problems, we could also be working with a difference of these problems as well, of these factors. The difference of 1 and 40 would give you a positive or a negative 39. The difference of 20 and 2 would always give you 18, positive or negative. 4 and 10 would give you a difference of positive or negative 6, and 5 and 8 would give you a positive or negative 3. Now 14 is what we're going for. So our two binomials, which will be your answer, are going to have 4 and 10 in them. Now the first term is going to be easy in this section. You've got y times y is y squared. 4 and 10, you can put one of them in one and put the other one in the other. The position won't matter. And to get a plus 14y, both of these need to be positive. Now if we repeat the process of what we did up here, then your middle terms would be 4y and 10y put together, and that's where you're going to get to 14y. Alright, example 4, we're going to do the same process. We're going to factor out 18 on this one. Now 18 could be 1 and 18, could be 2 and 9, or it could be 3 and 6. Now we're going to be working with sums, not differences, but this could be 19 or 17. 2 and 9 could be either 11, which is our goal, or it could be 7, and 3 and 6 would be either 9 or 3. So we only have one option, that's using 2 and 9. So let's put in our parentheses, and our first terms will be y and y again, and we know it's going to be 2 and 9. Now since your middle term is negative, and it's a negative 11y, I have to do negative 9y minus 2 more y to get to 11y. And you'll get used to the fact that as you see this as a plus and this as a minus, that both of these terms will be negative. And that's something that'll recur in a lot of your problems. All right, example 5 on this one, I'm going to move over here, and let's factor 14. Now you only have two sets for 14. You have 1 and 14, and you have 2 and 7. And when you look at your sums and differences, the sums would give you 15 or 9, and your differences are going to give you 13 or 5. Now your goal is 10. So since there are no possibilities that give you 10, this one you cannot factor, and the way you answer that at this stage is to enter that as a prime trinomial. And so there's our examples. Let's look at 3 sample problems from the work today. Problems 2, 5, and 23. The assignment is page 215, 1 through 24. So let's start out with a few here. Number 2, you want to start out by looking at the factors of 8, which would be 1 and 8 or 2 and 4. Now we're dealing primarily with sums again in 5, 7, but differences will be something you want to get used to. So if you have sums, you're going to have a sum of 9 or 6. Now 9's our goal, so we already have that figured out. Differences would give you 7 or 2, and it could be positive or negative on any of these. But 1 and 8 are going to be the factors that we want to use here. So let's put our parentheses in. The first term will be x times x to give us the x squared. You'll have a 1 and an 8. And on here, since both are positive, both must be positive in here. And your terms will be 1x plus 8x to give us 9x. Number 5, let's factor 14 again. As we saw in the example problems, 14 has only 2 sets. You have 1 and 14, and you have 2 and 7. Now we're trying to get to 9, and probably at this point you already see the 7 plus 2. So let's go ahead and enter our answer. Your first terms will be y times y. You have a 2 and 7. You can put those in either order. And again, here's our pattern where we have a plus sign with a negative sign on the left, making them both negative. When you double check your work, you have negative 7y and a negative 2y, giving us negative 9y, so that checks out. Now on 23, since you have this v to the second power over here at the end, and you have u squared, you're going to have double variables in the problem. Now, the way I like to do that, just to make sure I don't mess up, when I draw my parentheses in, I'm going to put my u's in, but I also want to go ahead and put the v's in also. That way I can focus on the factors and not worry about missing that variable. So let's look at the factors of 49 on this one. You've got 1 and 49 at 7 times 7. So for your sums, you could have 50, or you could have 14. And on differences, you would have 48 and 0. So on here, in order to get to 50, I need to use 1 and 49. So let's put those in. We'll just put 1. Actually, you don't even need the 1 there since you have a variable on this one. And 49. And then here is that same pattern again where you have a negative sign on the left and a positive one on the right, meaning you have 2 negative signs. So your 2 negatives add up to negative 50 UV in the middle by negative 1 UV and negative 49 UV. And then for your last term, a negative times a negative will give you a positive.